Good afternoon and welcome to Lifetime Series with me, Kevin Britz, proudly powered by leadershipbydesign.co, leading the charge with insights, information, and ultimately effective results. Joining me in today's leadership and coaching segment, we have a speaker who works with spiritually driven entrepreneurs to show up and shine authentically, to scale profitable, impactful, world-changing businesses. Please welcome Dr. Christina Fontana. Hey, Dr. Christina, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. I am very pregnant right now. I'm 9 months pregnant.
It's right around the corner, right?
You can't tell from here down, but there's a big belly right here. So, no, but I'm excited. So thank you for having me because I'm trying to, my goal this year is to reach 200 audiences. And so you are, I think, number 52. So I'm getting there.
Wow, fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah,
And you're pregnant. So you're leading with leading the example here.
Yeah.
So, to kick it off, Christina, don't you want to tell us, just give us more sort of insight about who you are, what you do, and just so, everyone listening can tune in, kind of say, they understand more about you.
Absolutely. So I am traditionally a pharmacist. I went to pharmacy school and I practiced as a pharmacist for about 10 years. And then I transitioned into the work that I'm doing now because of some of the challenges that I was experiencing and moving through. So a lot of, what we're going to talk about today is how trauma shows up in every area of our life. So for me, I had a rare eating disorder. I was dating narcissistic men. I was abusive to myself because of past abuse that I had experienced in my childhood, and all of the programming and the conditioning and my identity, which unconsciously was that of a victim. And I was so disempowered when I started this entrepreneurial journey that I saw over time that I wasn't allowing myself to truly embody the full expression of who God made me to be, God, source, spirit. And so the reason why I do this healing work now, I was trained as a pharmacist where, in pharmacy school, they teach you that, disease is a result of, lifestyle modification, lifestyle changes that, lack of exercise or nutrition or genetics. But there was something missing when it came to me exploring my own eating disorder and why I had this. Like, that all did not make sense to why I was experiencing these symptoms of, I was having binge eating disorder and anxiety. And it was this cyclical self-sabotage behavior that I was doing every single night. And I know that that was really a gift, that it was a gift for me to look within myself to say, okay, why is this happening? And to go explore down this path of a non-traditional healing route. So I started looking at things like energy work and hypnosis, and I got trained in all of these things, nervous system work, and that's led me to this path. So I know that eating disorder, that trauma, as out there as this might sound, I know that for me, I had to go through that in order to become the healer that I am now. So essentially the work that I do now is transformation work, and it's rapid transformation work because I'm able to quickly use my intuition and within 5 minutes kind of feel the frequency of what someone's saying, their embodiment, their posture. I can really feel into their energy and kind of translate that and say, okay, this is where we're getting stuck. This is kind of where the kink is in the hose, where, if you're getting, as an example, a lot of times I coach business owners and they might be saying like, oh, like I'm not experiencing, I really want to get more clients, but there's a block. So I can quickly diagnose and say, well, you're showing up this way. And I do it in a very loving and compassionate way, but it's essentially helping people see the blind spots, right? We can't always see what's behind us. So I lovingly say, hey, this is what your energy is reading, and this is how we can shift it. So I have a bunch of different transformation tools. Like I said, hypnosis, subconscious programming, somatic work to help move that energy through the body to clear the block, nervous system work. I mean, all of these different things that I've learned over the past 12 years that people shift very quickly. And that's how I'm able to then help them really show up and shine as their true self, because so often, yes, we want the outcome, whether it's the money, the relationship, the health, but we have to generate that feeling from within us. And so it really, this journey requires a deeper level of healing. And that's where coaching comes in. Someone like me who can come in and say, okay, let's shift this, because this is an old pattern that's not working for you. And the reason why I do it is because I've been there. So that's just a little, a little bit.
So I mean, I just want to go back to, I just made a note of one of the things you mentioned is trauma is a gift. And, I understand what you mean. And,
Yep.
I've had my fair share of trauma, just even in, 2023. I would probably say 2023 was one of the biggest life-defining years of my life.
Wow.
So I know what you mean, trauma being a gift, but don't you want to just touch on that so that people get the sort of nuance and understanding of why you would say that? Because, nobody thinks of trauma as, this is a beautiful gift that I've been handed.
Right. So that's a higher perspective. You don't start off there. So whenever you're first starting on your healing journey, there's a lot of that emotional reactivity. There's a lot of that, emotional processing that needs to happen first before you see it as a gift. So I will say that absolutely, because if you have an abuser and you're like, how are they a gift, right? You don't see that in the moment. So there's different phases of healing that we go through in our spiritual awakening. And so the releasing and the purging of those emotions is the first step. Then eventually you can say, you can get to that higher perspective to where you can see, wow, I needed to go through that in order to strengthen my character. So as an example, I was dating these unavailable men. What were they mirroring to me that I had to strengthen within myself, to stand in my power, to not tolerate abuse, to there's that empowering story that it is available if we look for it. And oftentimes the reason why we don't heal is because we're holding on to that, like, oh, well, making ourselves right or making them wrong, or, that victim story, or I can't let this go, or they deserve to be punished, or whatever. There are all of these very subtle beliefs, and you need to work through all of that. Sometimes you need to get support around that to be able to release some of these stories and these beliefs that are costing you, because it is costing you something to hold on to that. I want you to imagine that you're walking up a mountain and you're carrying all these heavy boulders with you from past resentment, past anger. It's heavy. And so we can choose to hang on to that self-righteous, like, oh, well, this is what happened to me. And I'm not discounting or dismissing anybody's experience, but there comes a point to where you realize, wow, this is costing me to trust somebody else in a new relationship, or it's costing me my health. And by holding on to this thing, whatever that is, it is not allowing you to be free, which is ultimately what we all are looking for, right? When you show up and shine as yourself, you're free. There's no skeletons in the closet. There's nothing you have to hide or protect. You get to show up as yourself. And there's such a feeling of freedom and empowerment, and like that is what is on the other side of the mountain. That's what I really want to help people find, is that freedom to just be themselves, because then the energy's free flowing. Then abundance comes to you in all these different ways. And I say this from experience. So I love that you brought this up. You're not going to see trauma as a gift in the beginning. There's going to be a lot of that, like, they did this, resentment, emotions, all of that. And I'm going to challenge you to see, how is that costing me? Right? Am I going to keep holding on to this thing? And maybe it's like towards yourself. Maybe it's like shame towards whatever you might have done.
Yeah.
But I want you to know that there's freedom on the other side of letting that go.
So, I mean, one of the, just shifting gears back to that spirituality conversation, and I think, when we chatted first, it's a practice that I, incorporate in all the work that I currently do with all my clients, and really sort of, I mean, we know about all the quotients that we have, and we have agility quotient, and intelligence and spiritual quotient and financial quotient. But very often spirituality in itself is seen as religious, right?
Right.
You go to that religion side.
Yeah.
But many business leaders emphasize on practical strategies and bottom line results. How does integrating spirituality into business practice contribute to profitability and sustainability beyond conventional methods? Because I think when you see it, you kind of go, oh, wow, why didn't we ever start with this?
Yes.
And why isn't this part of our foundation?
This is such a pivotal question for this conversation. I want you to think about the fact that you can have whatever strategy you want. If there is the idea and the implementation of that idea, but you never implement it and you have all the strategy, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be profitable. So the gap in between that, this is what I teach, is all of the protection parts, the nervous system responses of fight, flight, freeze, or people pleasing, and all of these little like beliefs or blocks that get in the way from you actually implementing that, because the body is always trying to protect. So this is where the subconscious comes in and says, oh, well, the last time that you stood in front of an audience and tried to speak, you froze. And so there's that negative consequence that sabotages us and holds us back from actually implementing or showing up as our full self in business, in teams, in a corporate setting, whatever the setting is. And so that is why when I have an idea, I take it right to implementation, because there's no resistance in the way. There's no protective part of me that's saying, oh, well, that's not safe. And it's not conscious, right? Where you'll hear people say like, oh, I procrastinate, or, oh, I have perfectionism, or I people please. I had a client once that she fixated so much on putting a social media post out. She spent 6 hours on this post. So again, you think about that gap, like how long is it taking you to put this idea and actually put that post out there? Or I had somebody else who she was a perfectionist too, and she never published her book. Like, the impact isn't going to be there. You're not going to be able to make royalties from your book, get clients from the book. So I give those examples to show that tangible, there's a gap in between that idea and implementation. So it doesn't matter how many strategies you have or what kind of business coaching you get, the energy that you bring and that gap, depending on how wide that gap is. And usually that's based upon our survival patterns and all the ways that our body's trying to protect us. That's going to impact your bottom line, your productivity, and your profitability. And also your self-expression and your joy of how you're showing up in your business.
So as you were talking now, like one of the things I remember when we did speak was especially around trauma and, bringing that spirituality and those two connections, but also, the wonderful story you keep selling yourself. And when you mentioned the client that took 6 hours, they get so wrapped up in the space between thinking and action,
right,
that the story sort of overrules and overrides any outcome at the end of the day. And the more emotionally attached you are to that story, the worse the story becomes, and the sort of downward spiral of negativity and negating yourself. And very quickly, the more you do that, the more the worse it becomes, right?
Yeah.
So you have to find a strategy, essentially, in your business, in your spirituality, to kind of interrupt that process, else it takes over.
Right. Exactly. It's a pattern interrupt, but it's also a nervous system response, because that fight, flight, freeze, perfectionism falls in that freeze category, where you want to move, you want to take that action, but then it's almost like you have one foot on the gas pedal and one on the brake. So that's why it takes so long for perfectionists or people who think in black and white to actually take action, because it's like they're stalling, right? Or like if you think of a car stalling, they want to do it, but they can't, because there's some kind of a negative consequence of, oh, well, if I don't do this perfectly, I'm a failure. Or if, I'm afraid to be rejected or whatever. There's typically like a deeper root to it. And typically with perfectionism, shame is right next to it. So there's that either I'm perfect or I'm bad. So we want to avoid that shame, that unworthiness. And that's really what's, I think, a block for a lot of people is they don't see the shades of gray because of this nervous system response from, trauma or things that have happened in the past that aren't allowing them to mobilize that energy and actually implement.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you do a lot of keynote talks, and in one of the talks, you discuss the concept of pivoting to increase profitability in
Yeah.
organizations. How can we use a spiritual perspective, and how does that aid leaders in navigating change effectively, especially during challenging times or industry shifts?
Right.
Because it really does lend itself to purpose, your value system, and really start honing into really understanding who you are as a business, right? But I mean, what can you share with us in a sense of how do we scale that profitability for leaders?
Right. So this is a great segue from perfectionism and the nervous system, because when we're in that fight, flight, freeze response, this part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, is not online. So we
Yeah.
can't think creatively, we can't think strategically or outside of the box because it's only a finite amount of opportunities that are out there. So when we're in fight or flight and that amygdala part of our brain is on, it's very hard to see options. So it's like this, you have blinders on. When you start to do this work and allow yourself to go more into that parasympathetic nervous system response where you're opening up that field of vision, now all of a sudden there's all these other creative possibilities. And actually, I would love to give your audience, I just created, it's called Pivot to Profit, actually. It's a
Yeah.
3-day free workshop that I'm happy to give to your audience, where I teach about these concepts, because I know that it is important to do that inner work, but also look at, okay, where are these opportunities? Can I partner strategically with other business owners that have an overlapping audience that I do? Can I start to maybe tweak some of my offers or whatever that might be? There are always creative solutions when you have a calm and relaxed nervous system, because then your mind starts saying, oh, look at these different possibilities that are around me. And to be honest, I had to do that. That's why I created that workshop, because 2023 was a shift for the coaching industry. And so I had to start to be creative and innovative and do collaborations and workshops and all of these different things to start to kind of pivot with the market. So I think that that's important to think about when, like it really does start with the state of your nervous system that impacts how you see your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So, I mean, one of the things you also chat about, which I find fascinating, and I'd love to get your insights on this, monetizing knowledge and turning one's gifts into gold is a
Yeah.
common aspect for entrepreneurs, as we know. How can individuals align their spiritual values with their business goals to create a fulfilling, prosperous venture and staying true to that purpose? But also, one of the things, just to add, which I've noticed, is bringing the unconscious competence into the conscious competence, because very often people know how to do stuff and they don't
Right.
realize that knowledge that you did and you researched and you just do as common knowledge is not common knowledge to everybody.
Right.
And people sometimes don't. I'm one of them. I do so many things and I'm so capable of so much, and I kind of just take it for granted that I know how to do it. But the case is, how do you monetize that? How do you bring that idea and that knowledge to life? Because I think a lot of people kind of miss that too.
That's a great question. So yeah, I believe that everybody has unique gifts that they can bring to the world. So what I would say to somebody is, what feels most exciting and energizing for you to channel these gifts into, maybe it's an offer or it's a workshop, or I mean, I've done a lot of different things, workshops, retreats, programs, do you want to be doing talks? So you have to kind of find the container that feels good to you to be the channel for which you allow those gifts to shine through. So it's, again, all of it for me comes back to the energy, right? The energy within us. How do we liberate those gifts, own those gifts, right? Because a lot of people are taught, oh, it's not okay, don't brag. Oh, well, if you go up and say, oh, this is what I'm really good at, that it sounds cocky or whatever. So there's all of these little blocks along the way, but essentially you're liberating those gifts and then teaching other people who are maybe 5-10 steps behind you how to make the process easier. And you're saving them time, you're saving them money, you're helping them accelerate the path and collapse time. So I think it's really about those things, like looking at what am I really gifted at, that maybe, like you said, I take for granted. Like my intuition is definitely one that I'm aware that, like, I can look at somebody right away and say, like, okay, this is how we can tweak this. This is how we can help you shift to really own who you are. And I do this with elevator pitches, as simple as it is, because I think that there can be a deeper way that we communicate the potency of what we do. So that's just one simple example, but that leads to more productivity, more profitability, and the ability to create multiple income streams. Why not? I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, on the show, we like to share some tips and tricks. And for someone who wants to work with people out there and entrepreneurs who are spiritually driven to show up and shine and authentically scale their businesses, what are 5 kind of immediate action steps they could sort of take today to kind of start this process? I mean, obviously they should get hold of you, but I mean, besides that, like what are the some tips and tricks you can leave with the audience today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would be curious. I would ask the people closest to you, hey, what do you see in me that I have that is a gift? As an example. So maybe if you're stuck on that, you're like, I don't know what my gifts are. Ask the people around you and you're going to start to see themes like, oh, you're really compassionate, or you think outside the box, or you're extremely creative. You'll start to kind of hear themes that come around. Like I remember one of my friends from college was like, oh, whenever I think of you, I think of the word light. And that actually became like my business name, Enlighten Wellness Solutions, back in 2018. So it did help me to kind of look outside myself and see, okay, what are, like, these people know me really well. So that would be one tip, is to ask, like, what do you see as some of my gifts? The second thing I would say is to follow your intuition, because I think that so often we doubt that because the outside world is so noisy. So maybe you want to go start your business, but I know I had my own father say this to me. He's like, you're crazy, that fearful projection, you're not going to be profitable, it's never going to work, blah blah blah. So sometimes it's just quieting your mind and sitting with your own heart and saying, what feels good for me? What do I know to be true? And I feel like that voice comes through very easily whenever you quiet down the outside noise. Geez, you challenged me with 5. So I would say that, yeah, follow your intuition for sure. I would say to, here we go, to seek out support, whether it's listening to a podcast like this, like see what's resonating with you. What is the frequency that you want to be? Like, if, say, as an example, someone wants to be a spiritual healer, find podcasts, find role models on Instagram that you can follow, that you can say, wow, look, they did it, I can do it too. I think that's important to have kind of like a reference for your brain to say, yes, this is possible. The other thing I would say is to definitely invest in some kind of personal development, whether it's a book or a course or something, because really that's what we're talking about here. Yes, strategy is important, but doing that deeper inner work, I think, is so powerful. So that's, what is that, number 4? I have to come up with one more, number 5.
I think number 5 would, just going back to that story, is like maybe investigate your own story, investigate the story selling, right? Because so many times we've just become part of that narrative, and that story has become, and I always sort of play pretend with my clients and kind of go, if you had a magic wand, and I took away all your problems, who are you? Right?
Yeah.
And they really, like, when you ask them, it's like, well, I'm not just my problems, or I'm not just my business, or I'm not just a husband or a mother or a father or whatever. You're not this labeled thing.
Right.
But I love those. I mean, ask, advice from people, follow intuition, seek out support, interrupt the story, and I forget the fourth one now. But I mean, those are really, really, those are immediate sort of positions you can sort of take right now to start challenging the narrative of your general story, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, because we unconsciously have an identity of who we are, because you've had certain thoughts about yourself for years and they may be unconscious, certain emotions you experience on a weekly basis that creates, I'm going to go into Joe Dispenza and that work, the quantum physics, that
Yeah.
creates the electromagnetic signature that you're broadcasting. And you're drawing experiences into your life based upon these thoughts that became beliefs, that became your identity, and who you believe you are. So again, I think we talked about this before, like the very beginning part of this spiritual awakening journey is often starting to question, starting to release some of these old belief systems of who we've been conditioned to be. And oftentimes entrepreneurs are those that are willing to go through the fire to release a lot of that and become and be birthed into something new. Like, who are you really? Like you said, I love that magic wand. I usually say, like, if you could wave a magic wand, what outcome would you want? But I like yours better. It's even better.
Well, but I mean, like you mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I've just bought his. I mean, it's not a latest book, but I've just bought his. I forget the name of it now, but it's one of his most famous ones. But when you start realizing, as humans, we only have the now,
Yep.
present to us and available. And instinctively, we base the now off what happened in our past.
Yep.
And the beautiful work that he sort of gets you to understand is, what if you just created the future and started basing your now off what potentially could happen?
Right.
Right. Your body, your that signature, that energetic signature that you're giving off it changes, right? So I mean, I do his meditations daily, so that's why I know.
Yeah. I went to one of his retreats. It was 2022. It was up in Niagara Falls, and I'm in Pittsburgh, so it wasn't that far from me. So yeah, like a week-long retreat. And that's what I was saying before. Like, if you want one of those outcomes, you want more clients, you have to tune to that energy. You have to feel worthy within your body to then tune to that frequency. It's just like a dial on a radio. And if you have unconscious beliefs from the past holding you back, or these protective parts, that's where you block it. And so that's a lot of the work that I do. So we're on the same page.
Yeah, and just the last thing I'm going to add to that is, it's focusing on your past is also an away from strategy, which gets you away from it, and that's great. But you're not looking at where you're going. So when you turn around and face the future and face what it is you want, that's a towards strategy. So is your strategy working, right? So if it's an away from strategy, it might not be working effectively. But if it's a towards strategy, you really have a wonderful, clear definition of where you're going, what it is you want, and really achieving that rather than focusing on what's past, right?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, pivot to profit, a gift online. Do you want to just tell us quick about that? So like everyone check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a 3-day marketing and sales workshop, but really, it's deeper than that. That's kind of like my Trojan horse strategy to just get people in, because they can latch on to that. But there's so much more with the energetics. Like the day one, we talk about magnetic client attraction strategies. That's all about showing up and shining as yourself. So throwing out a lot of the rules of traditional marketing and strategy, it's really showing up and shining as yourself. I talk about kind of one of the strategies I mentioned before, creating recurring referral relationships through finding people that have a similar niche as you. So I go through that. And then on day 3, I talk about my 5 profit pillars to really help you move the needle in your business to be profitable and productive so that you can scale your business. So definitely check that out. It's you and I will talk. I'll show you where it is to put it in the show notes. But yeah, and if you have questions, I'm here. Kevin, I just really appreciate you bringing me on and your insightful questions. It's just been a pleasure. And I have to
Thank
go
you.
check out your book over there, The Future of Work as Human.
Yeah, please do, please do. Available on Take a Lot and Amazon. So, guys, she works with spiritually driven entrepreneurs and leaders, for that matter, to show up and shine authentically to scale profitable, impactful, world-changing businesses. And that's Dr. Christina Fontana. Thank you, Dr. Christina. Thanks for being here and joining us. It was really so much.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Guys, please remember to share and tune in to the Lunchtime Series every Wednesday and Thursday. And from myself and Dr. Christina, have a fantastic week and chat to you soon. Thanks so much.